So in this segment, we're going to be talking about a clip from Rachel Sharby, where she argues that it's ridiculous to argue inflation is caused by public sector pay, and then we'll be cutting over to Lewis Goodall and then a graph from the Guardian. So we're going to cut to this clip first from Rachel Sharby, where she puts a smackdown on this absolute moron.
I think it's ridiculous to suggest that inflation is caused by public sector pay. I mean, obviously, public sector pay has stagnated for the last 12 years, all the while inflation has gone up. So to suggest that one has caused the other is borderline ludicrous. Hang on, I haven't finished. The other thing I would...
Damn, hang on. Sit the fuck down.
...say is that why is the government saying that public sector cannot have a pay rise? Why is that? Because we simply cannot afford it. It's not cutting it when so many organisations, including Tax Justice UK, have said, you know, there are ways that you could fund this. You could tax the wealthy. You could generate 37 billion by 5 tax measures that Tax Justice UK have suggested. You've got...
I kind of wish she would lay them out. She would have laid them out during this kind of clip, but I'll try and follow up on that if that's what you're interested. If anyone's interested in it, I will look up Tax Justice and see what their ideas are for the government how the government could raise some money.
Millionaires in this country asking to be taxed more. You won't do it for ideological reasons. It's nothing to do with the economy, and I just wish you would at least have the honesty to admit that.
And also, let's not forget that it's not just millionaires either. It's actual energy companies. It's like Shell. Even Shell said, you know, they should tax the industry more. Madness. Imagine an industry coming out and saying we should pay more in tax. When have you ever heard this before? I don't think I ever have. I've never heard of industry or millionaires coming out and say, please tax us more. And people say, well, they could just pay more in tax if they wanted to voluntarily. Yeah, they could, but the whole point of having a government is a centralised system where they can distribute money more effectively. They can make decisions better than just individuals. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So we're going to cut to Lewis Goodall. He's going to get some redemption on the channel, given the absolute shambles of the last appearance he had on this channel. Not great from Lewis last time, but this time he does a lot better.
Underlying theme is simply that inflation is so high, currently at around 11%. Wage growth is nowhere near that, and the pay awards offered in each of these industries do not match it. Workers are being asked, therefore, to take a real terms wage cut.
And some of these industries, they're being offered, 2 and 3% when inflation's at 11%. You're talking a real terms cut of around the 7-8% mark. It's ridiculous.
Effectively. Now, as a result, we are facing the biggest squeeze in living standards in living memory. And the thing is, there have been times in our history when workers have had to accept reductions in living standards as a result of wider economic circumstances, but those times have usually at least followed a period of rising living standards, seriously rising wages. Instead, by the time we got to the pandemic, average weekly earnings were still below the peak they reached before the financial crisis in 2008. This sort of stagnation has not happened before in our modern history. If our real wages had grown at the same rate as before 2008, then they would now be 47% higher in real terms. Oh,
that's madness, We sure could use some of that. We sure could use some of that money. Let's be honest here, 47% real terms increase we should have gotten since the financial crash. Madness, and we haven't got it.
Percent higher in real terms. Only in Japan, Mexico and a smattering of Eurozone countries has wage growth been weaker than in Britain. Public sector workers have been especially badly hit. Public sector pay overall is 6% smaller in real terms in 2022 than it was when the government came to power in 2010. NHS nurses' pay is 8%.
This is wild stuff.
NHS doctors' overall pay is 7% smaller. Police officers, 13% worse off. Teachers, 12% worse off. MPs, meanwhile, by the way, have only taken a hit of around 3%.
There you go. There's the thumbnail right there. There's everything you need to know. The fact that MPs have taken a 3% hit is wild to me, because I thought they took a much bigger hit, a less hit, because what do you call it? They've consistently gotten above inflation pay rises. But the simple fact is, MPs look at -3 compared to nurses, doctors, police officers, teachers. The ones who actually contribute to society rather than the ones who hamper the economy and cause wage stagflation. They're the ones that have done this. If you look at this graph here, wages have gone down since 2010 in real terms. Adjusted for consumer price index, consumer price inflation. You look at that, it peaks near the £700 mark, and it's lower. it's low end. It's just madness to think. You think as a society we should be moving forward. The financial crash was what, in 2008, so that was what, 14 years ago, and yet things are worse now than they were back then, and they've never gotten as good as since the financial crash. And you've got to ask yourself, what happened since the financial crash? What is different from say this market in 97, where wages have consistently gone up in both the private and public sector, compared to, you got changes of methodology there, so that's obviously an issue. But what has changed from 97 to 2010 and 2010 to 2022? What's changed that? The answer is the Conservative government, and Lewis Goodall lays it out here perfectly. Look at that. There's your evidence right there. The simple fact is the Conservative government have caused rapid wage stagnation, and not wage stagnation, deflation even. And had you asked people after that period, if we got that 47% right, the figure that he put it at, where has it gone? Great, I'm not going to find it now, but I think he put it at 47% right. If we actually got that 47% figure, I think people would have accepted, a kind of 3% pay rise. I think people would have accepted a 2 or 3% pay rise. But the fact is, the working conditions now are worse than they were in 2007, 2008 before the financial crash. And to ask people now to take a further pay cut compared to, the way that life is now, it's just... No, I support the strikes 100%. Whichever industry feels like they should go on strike, we should do it. Because at the end of the day, the situation is that they've been hurt in real terms here. They've been hurt in real terms, and the fact is, why would you want to be a nurse when you're effectively earning 8% less than you did back in, say, 2006, or a doctor, or a police officer, or a teacher? The cost of living goes up consistently, but public sector money doesn't go up unless you're an MP. Fair enough, they're at -3%, but given the amount of expenses and things they can claim, that's nothing. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Shouts out to the newsagents and Lewis Goodall, and for putting this stuff out. I just wish the bass volume was a bit louder. I've got it on max volume, but I can't hear him properly. That's going to be a bit tricky to kind of mix in the audio. But, Lewis Goodall, a bit of redemption here. This is more in his wheelhouse, kind of, I think, numbers and statistics rather than talking about the EU single market. So, swinging a hit home run here, big boy. You really did. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. Is Lewis Goodall forgiven on the channel? Let me know in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one.